Dumelani, and welcome to another episode where you're going to be cooking with me. Normally, the meat is always the star of any meal, right? Because it's always easy to incorporate an array of flavors into it. However, today, one of my favorite traditional food staples I'm going to make in this video is something called Bogobe jwa Ting. And all it is very finely or coarsely ground sorghum grains. Sorghum are millet grains that are ground up between fine and coarse, and you ferment them. Now, the whole process of that deserves an entire video on its own, so I'm not going to talk about that today. Instead, what I'm going to do is just show you how to cook it. Now, of course, before I go into the nitty-gritties of making the Bogobe jwa Ting, I have to marinate, season, and prepare the meat, because flavorless meat really can take all the joy out of a meal. So oftentimes I make sure that I prepare the veg that I'm going to throw into the stew, or as well as flavoring and marinating the meats that are going to go inside and be cooked, because those really create an experience with the meal that you're going to eat. So I often take my time to marinate, season, and put in flavor into the meats. Once that is done, of course, I add my veg, which you saw me prepare, which would be onions and potatoes in this case, because the onions and potato beef stew rather always tend to go well with this Bogobe jwa Ting. They really help to balance out the sourness that you're gonna taste when you have the Bogobe jwa Ting, because the starch itself is fermented. It is going to have a tinge of sourness to it. So these very hearty stews do tend to balance out the meal very nicely and not have anything overpower anything. There's not an overwhelming sense of sourness to the meal or saltiness with the stew. Now, this next part is specifically for my fellow countrymen and those that are well versed in cooking this particular dish. We're all from different backgrounds and cultures and tribes, etc., etc. My way may not be how you are used to cooking it, but the result is still tasty and good, because my family and those that have eaten this dish of my hands have often enjoyed it. So with that being said, to the rest of y'all that are learning how to cook this, what I basically do is I boil the water just up until a point where it starts to begin a rolling boil. And then once that is done, I then mix a part of the sorghum with water. It has to be watery at this point, and I add it to the pot, and I have to keep stirring. Okay, this is a good exercise for your biceps and triceps, because you're gonna be stirring in the early parts of the cooking process to ensure that there are no lumps that develops or no clumps, because if you just pour it in and let it cook, it will develop a mass that is inedible and unmixable. So you really want to make sure to mix and stir as frequently as you can in the beginning, so that you get all those lumps and clumps out of the way as you're cooking, as you can basically see me doing now. And I do it rigorously so that I ensure that there's no mass or masses that will develop. Now, once I get it to the consistency that I was talking about earlier, the little bubbly bit, then I cover it up, and then I let some time pass, like 5 to 10 minutes. I let that pass before I checked the pot again. And at this point, it will no longer be bubbling, but it will, of course, be cooking. So that's when I go in and stir it up a little more to ensure that every single lump that could be lumped in there is lumped out of there. Mix in and incorporate about spoonfuls of the starter into the pot. If you add a lot of it at the time, you will be getting a whole thick Bogobe jwa Ting. As you can see, that's the last part that I was adding to it so that it doesn't get thick, because as you serve it up and it cools off, it's eventually gonna thicken by itself while on the plate. So depending on how thick you like your staples to be like, it's up to you. But on this day, I didn't want it too thick because it takes a whole lot of arm strength, a whole lot of arm day to get that thickness to be stirred in properly. Now, once you finished, after the 10 to 15 mark on a low heat, your texture should be very thick, not super gummy, but you should be able to tell that it's very thick and ready to be plated up. And I forgot to take a picture of my father's plate, so I took instead of my bowl. And it was so delicious, and I hope you guys try it. Thank you so much for watching the entirety of this video. I am so grateful for your viewership. Please, if you like this content, make sure to like and subscribe. Till next time.